All right, let's talk about something that's at the core of literally any argument. Who actually gets to speak and, why do we believe them? We're going to dig into this really cool concept called ethos. Let's get right into it.
Think about it. Every single time someone gets up to speak, doesn't matter if it's a board meeting, a lecture, or some political rally, there's this little voice in the back of your head, right? And it's asking, okay, why should I listen to you? Answering that one question, well, that's the foundation of all persuasion.
And yeah, that answer has a name, ethos. It's this ancient Greek idea, but it's super relevant. It's all about a speaker's credibility. It's not just what they are saying, it's about who they are that makes us lean in and listen. And to really get our heads around this, we're going to look at 4 historical figures who all had a lot to say about war, but from completely different and kind of wild positions of authority.
So, first up, we've got the warriors. These are 2 guys who were right there, in the thick of it. But, and this is the cool part, their right to speak about war came from totally opposite places. One was the volunteer who chose to bleed for the cause, and the other was the ultimate insider who decided to turn on the very system he'd mastered.
So here's our first guy, Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. Now, this was a Harvard man, son of a famous author. He did not have to go fight in the American Civil War, but he did. He signed right up, and get this, he was wounded 3 different times. So when he got up to talk about war later in life, you better believe he wasn't just spinning theories. He was speaking from actual physical scars.
And that's the whole point, right? When a guy like Holmes says something like this, that a soldier's faith is noble, those words just land differently. They have incredible weight. And why? Simple. He paid for that opinion with his own blood. His authority, his ethos, was forged in a fire he chose to walk into.
Okay, now let's do a complete 180 and meet Smedley Butler. This guy was the exact opposite of a volunteer like Holmes. He was a lifer, a career military pro, a professional warrior. This dude fought everywhere. China, Haiti, France, you name it. We're talking about one of the most decorated Marines in U.S. history. He wasn't just in the system, he was the system.
Which is exactly why this quote is just a bombshell. Come on. This isn't some protester on a street corner. This is one of the military's biggest heroes calling the whole thing a scam. The power, the ethos behind that statement comes from that shocking betrayal. Everyone expected him to be the poster boy for the institution. Instead, he pulls back the curtain and exposes the whole operation.
So right there, you've got these 2 incredibly powerful but totally conflicting kinds of authority. On one side, you have Holmes, who earns his right to speak by basically saying, I chose to suffer for this. And on the other, you've got Butler, who earns his by mastering the entire game and then having the nerve to tell everyone how it's rigged from the inside.
Okay, so that covers the fighters. But what about the people who speak about war without ever having been a soldier? This gets really interesting. Let's look at another contrast, the statesman who has to give the orders versus the witness who is simply forced to be there.
And here's President Woodrow Wilson. Now, Wilson was an academic, a politician, a man of words, not weapons. So obviously his authority didn't come from fighting in the trenches. Now, it came from the incredible weight and power of his office, the President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief.
But what's so fascinating is how Wilson actually boosted his own authority. Remember, he campaigned on keeping America out of World War I. He was very public about how much he agonized over the decision. So when this guy, the one who tried so hard to avoid the conflict, finally stands up and says, okay, we have to go to war. Wow. That reluctance made his argument seem absolutely unavoidable and even just.
And then there's this guy, Erich Maria Remarque, the author of All Quiet on the Western Front. See, unlike Holmes or Butler, Remarque didn't choose his war. He got drafted. He was shoved into the German army when he was just 18 years old. He wasn't a hero, he wasn't a professional, and he certainly wasn't a president. He was just an ordinary kid swept up by history.
And this shows a completely different source of ethos. Remarque's power isn't in being exceptional, it's in being typical. Most soldiers in most wars aren't philosophical volunteers or career professionals. They're kids, just like him, sent to fight. Remarque has the authority to speak for the silent millions because, well, he was one of them.
So let's bring all 4 of these figures together. What you start to see is that there isn't one single definition of the right to speak. It's more like a rich spectrum of authority, where every single type has its own unique strengths, but also its own built-in weaknesses.
Just look at how this all breaks down. You've got Holmes, the volunteer. His courage is beyond question, but let's be real, his experience was super rare. Then there's Butler, the insider. He knows where all the bodies are buried, but you have to wonder, why'd he wait so long to speak out?
Wilson, the statesman, holds all the power, but he's asking other people to make a sacrifice he'll never have to. And Remarque, the witness, he's the voice of the masses, but his story is a testimony, not a policy proposal.
So, the really crucial takeaway here is this. We shouldn't get trapped trying to decide whose ethos is the best. Holmes isn't inherently more credible than Remarque, or Butler more than Wilson. They're just different. The real skill is understanding what each type of authority allows someone to say and what it costs them.
And that leaves us with this final question. Something you can take with you. The next time you listen to someone, don't just ask if they have the right to speak. Ask what their specific authority, their experience, their position, their story allows them to see, and, just as importantly, what it might be hiding from their view.